So today we're going to be talking about the 12 keys to recovery I list in my book, Codependent Now What? It's not you, it's your programming. Don't forget to click subscribe and the notification bell. This way, every time I upload a new video, you'll be the first to know. So I wanted to share with you the 12 keys to recovery that I think really help someone who's struggling with codependency, someone who's come from a dysfunctional home, someone who has grown up with childhood emotional neglect, those of us who really want a roadmap out of the codependent mind, those of us who grew up feeling not good enough, those of us who felt like there was no place to call home, there was no safe place in our home, and therefore our minds couldn't develop a healthy sense of self because, well, we were too busy trying to survive. You know, the mind has to decide, are we in survival or are we thriving? Is it safe? Can I let my guard down? Or do I need to be on guard? And so if we came from a home that was abrasive and that felt unsafe, a home that was unpredictable, for a number of reasons, right? You can come from a home where there's just tremendous financial insecurity, or maybe there's an addiction happening between the parents or a sibling. There's an inability to feel safe in the home due to raging and screaming and these types of things. Or if it's a foster care situation where a child is continually being pushed around, there are so many reasons for why a home can feel unpredictable to a child and why it's so difficult to develop the ability to feel safe and let your guard down. And when you let your guard down, suddenly your brain is being wired for connection versus protection. And now you're not so afraid all the time. So now you're looking forward to meeting new people instead of recoiling, when you meet people. I mean, there are so many unfair things that happen when you come from a dysfunctional home. And what I've tried to do in this book, Codependent Now What, is really give people a roadmap out. I wanted to make sure that people had some life skills and some exercises that could really help them reshape the way they see themselves and give them the hope to believe that they could actually change. So the first key is, beyond desire, there is humility and the hidden power of asking. So really, just to break it down, you have to be humble enough to ask for help, even within your own skin, even if you're not asking another 3D person. But a huge key to recovery is accepting that you need help, right? When you don't know that you're in trouble, when you don't know that you're drowning, you don't reach for the life raft, right? And when you're codependent, lots of times you don't know how sick you are. You don't know how reactive you are. You don't know how below the veil you are. You don't know how deeply in denial that you are. And so when you begin to awaken and you realize, wow, I have a problem. I have this thing called codependency. Now what? You have to be humble enough to ask. You have to be humble enough to say, I have a problem and what can I do to fix it? And so definitely, beyond desire to change, you must have the ability to ask for what you need. So how does that show up? You ask for clarity. You ask for information. You ask for a program. You ask for maybe a life coach or a therapist. You ask people for the assistance that you need to help you reframe how you see yourself. Because a big part of this process absolutely is humility, because a lot of codependents can take on the martyrdom where they think, well, I was the one that was doing everything. I was the cornerstone of my family, if you will. I was the nucleus. I was the one that supported my husband while he went to law school and he had an affair on me and I took care of the kids. And it's all true, right? You didn't know how to take care of yourself. You didn't know how to set boundaries. You were denying how you felt, right? But it wasn't good to do that. And all it did was make things worse. And now if you remain angry rather than humble, and if you don't really see how the giving up of yourself for the sake of another person has perpetuated this cycle of dysfunction, it's really difficult to heal. Now, I'm not blaming anybody who's struggling with codependency. I am explaining it, okay? I still have to work on myself every single day. But I have been that person that thought, how could I be the wrong one here if I'm the one taking care of everybody? Well, yeah, and being the one who takes care of everybody gives you the right to really complain too, And so It takes humility to be able to see that in yourself and want to move beyond pointing the finger and blaming other people for why we're not happy. And so humility is definitely a cornerstone of recovery. Desire is important. And humility tied to asking for what you need and recognizing that there's a problem in the first place is definitely a key to recovery. The second key is mention your intention. So let me just read to you a little bit. So most people are unintentional with their thoughts and feelings and actions. Most of us are reactive and do not even realize it. We have these belief systems that were programmed into us a long time ago, and when we hit adolescence, we go out into the world operating out of this standard operating system our caretakers downloaded into us when we were innocent, powerless creatures. If our fathers blew up when they got frustrated over small tasks, so do we. Or we attract people who blow up when they become frustrated. If our mothers catered to our fathers and ignored their own emotions, often we do the same in our own relationships or attract people we tend to cater to because we may be unaware we have been brainwashed to ignore our feelings and to do everything possible to avoid making other people upset. So to truly heal, you must be willing to live intentionally through thought, word, and deed. Invoking this practice allows you to slip into the driver's seat of your own life. So in other words, you have to become deliberate. You have to become conscious. You have to become aware of your intentions. One of the ways that I do this is I journal every single day. I have an affirmation list. So if I catch myself thinking in a negative way, I want to make sure I turn that around and become responsible for thinking in a more positive way. And I also have learned to pat myself on the back for when I've actually done something right. So this all helps to raise your ability to be more intentful and to be more conscious of your intentions. So the second key is intention. Become more mindful of your daily intentions. Number 3 is discipline and win. The dysfunctional roots in your mind are deep, and only discipline, desire, humility, and intention can create effective change. Discipline is what you will need to practice to heal completely. Imagine if you chose to do 3 things every day for the next 10 years. Imagine how much energy that would create in the direction of the intentions you were working on. So discipline is huge. What happens with most people on any recovery path is that they don't fail, they give up. Right? So they get tired of pushing. They get tired of trying. They get tired of trying to release. They get tired of processing their emotions. They get tired of waking up early and working on themselves. They get tired of personal development work. They get tired of going to a meeting. We live in a world that is very selfish and very narcissistic, in that everything is boom, boom, boom. Amazon, boom. And now competitors like Target, Whole Foods, and other Amazon and Whole Foods are actually working together now, but now we have competitors like Chewy.com and Target and other stores competing for the instant manifestation market. And so we have become so conditioned to be able to text someone and we expect a message right back. We want to order a latte and it comes to the door. We don't feel like going out for dinner, dinner comes to the door, right? So many of us in many parts of the world are experiencing this now. And so discipline is something that we have to remind ourselves is something successful people need. Because without discipline, you're not going to be able to change your life. And it absolutely requires you to develop the discipline to stay on the path, to be intentful, to keep asking, and to keep acknowledging what is within you that's codependent and needs to be fixed today. Because with codependents attach and they enmesh and they lose themselves. They lack boundaries, right? They're seeking external validation. And so we end up scurrying around being afraid of upsetting our partners or upsetting our children or upsetting our in-laws or upsetting our coworkers. We're losing ourselves through this enmeshment. So the fourth key, recovery key, is detachment versus enmeshment. So detaching from our emotions allows us to be objective about our emotions, the emotions that we feel are overwhelming us, right? So you are not your emotions. Your emotions are a byproduct of how you think, and how you think is the result of what you experienced as a child. You at your core are perfect. It's so important to remember that, minus the dysfunctional thoughts, ideas, and beliefs you were taught to believe about yourself. Modern psychology tells us that our emotions come from our thoughts, and yes, that's true, but this is not where the train ends or should end. In fact, consciousness has the ability to question reality. So human beings can and should think about the way that they think. Most of us have been duped into believing that we have no choice when it comes to what shows up in our mental fields, and that's just not true. Nothing could be further from the truth. I can feel rage and think about wanting to lash out at a person who just cut me off on the highway and choose not to react, right? So it's important that we are learning to observe what we observe without reacting to it. Because if you don't learn to observe, if you don't stop enmeshing even with your emotions, you will stay codependent. You will become one with your emotions. You won't have the space to observe your emotions. And in that space, you continue on this codependent path. So you attract narcissistic others. You attract toxic people. You end up raging when you want to actually be kind. You don't understand where all this anger is coming from because you're not learning to observe your emotions and even observe the dysfunctional beliefs that are at the root core of why this trigger is actually so triggering for you. So number 5, the key is to find the higher mind. You'll hear me talk a lot about consciousness. You cannot heal from codependency without an increase in consciousness, an expansion of consciousness. Einstein says it this way: you can't solve a problem with the same level of intelligence that created the problem. So for me to solve the problem of codependency, which is a riddle, right? I'm in a corn maze, but I don't know it, right? I'm asleep, but I think I'm awake. It's a riddle, right? It's a fantasy. And so in order to heal from codependency, I have to find my higher mind and get out of my unawakened unconscious mind. So your brain cannot think. Your brain holds thoughts, beliefs, and thought processes that were downloaded into your mind when you were young. The brain is coded with certain reflexes, like the pain versus pleasure principle and the fear of drowning, for instance. These are reflexes. The brain is designed to alert you to possible threats. The brain, however, relies very much on your emotional body to help it decipher what is actually threatening you or what is a threat to you. For instance, in the case of war veterans who have experienced fear immediately after hearing a loud blast, the brain will be wired to respond with a fight or flight response in reaction to hearing a sudden loud noise, even when not in battle. I believe the brain is simply trying to protect us when we experience a post-traumatic stress response. The brain wants us to get up and run and fight off an attacker. When we're children, however, we can't fight and we can't flee, right? We try to fawn or we freeze because we're powerless. We're little children. We don't have those options. And so when we have this pattern of fawning to avoid our feelings or a pattern of fawning to prevent someone from abandoning us, then we stay in this pattern until we awaken. And until we awaken and we find our higher mind, then we're going to stay below the veil of consciousness and repeat these patterns. So what's number 6? Number 6 is nudge the judge. What do I mean by that? So emotional freedom requires us to nudge the judge from the non-physical throne that exists in the center of our minds, hearts, and bodies. The judge's voices is an echo that has been recorded into each and every cell of our body. What I mean by that is if you grew up with a critical mom, if you grew up with a critical dad, your, if you want to call it, your superego has recorded this information. This is data. These are rules, right? These are constructs. So as a little girl, if you were told that you were not as beautiful as your sister or as smart as your brother or as athletic as your cousin, the code in your head is, I need to be more beautiful. I need to be more intelligent. I need to be more athletic. So below the veil of consciousness, you are beating yourself up for not being as beautiful, as athletic, or as intelligent, right? And this is cutting you off at the spiritual knees, because without the ability to hone in on what your talents are, you don't put your energy into that. And instead, you focus on these constructs or these insults or this criticism of the people from the outside that you have now absorbed. So now it is your own superego or inner critic's dialogue. It's your own narrative. So you need to stop judging yourself. I made a commitment to myself a long time ago that if I did nothing else, it would be to stop judging myself. So the minute I found myself doing something I didn't want to do and I felt remorseful, that was enough. I felt the remorse. I know I don't want to do that anymore. That is not in alignment with who I want to be. I need to change my behavior, change the way I think about that, and do better. And the heck with the people who want to stand there and judge me and persecute me. They ain't my tribe. They ain't my people, right? Anybody that's going to stand there and throw a stone at me, I can guarantee you, is not living in a glass house, or they shouldn't be, because no one has the right to throw a stone at someone else, because every person on this planet was born into dysfunction, has come here to evolve their soul. So we're all on the same path. We're all on the same journey. If we came into this life having critical parents, we have absorbed this narrative, and now we are criticizing ourselves. We must learn to nudge the judge. That makes healing from codependency and addiction and whatever else we're struggling with so much easier, because now I don't have the shame of simply being a human being, a flawed, imperfect human being with a personality that has been affected by my experiences. And now I have the ability from a detached space to love myself enough not to judge myself and move forward. So the next key is number 7, acceptance leads to transcendence. Acceptance just may be the most undervalued tool in a human being's psychological tool belt. Regardless of what is ever happening in our lives, the reality is it's actually happening. What most of us do not realize is that often we don't accept what's happening in our lives, even though it's happening in our lives, right? When a wife finds lipstick on her husband's collar, she may choose to ignore what she sees. Deeper, she may choose to ignore the fight or flight response she feels standing there, holding his shirt in his hands. It is unhealthy not to accept what is happening in the now. Not accepting what is happening in the now causes the brain to essentially malfunction. It is healthier to learn how to integrate the emotions that show up in any given moment, and later to decide what you want to do about the situation that has actually been presented. When we are children, the ability to dissociate from our bodies helped us survive. On the healing journey, it will be essential that we learn to feel the emotions that show up without judging them in everyday life. And so this acceptance leads to transcendence. Transcendence, the ability to accept what's happening in the now, right? Acceptance leads to transcendence. This acceptance idea that if I can accept it, then I can acknowledge it, I can feel it, I can honor how I feel, and allow these emotions to process through me. And in time, when I'm feeling calmer, I can be more objective about what I can control versus what I can't control. And in that space, in that mindset, that's when I should be making my decisions. When we are not accepting of what is, we are in resistance emotionally, vibrationally, physically, psychologically, right? We are resisting something that we wish was not happening, and then it actually persists, right? It is in the acceptance of what is, even when what is just so horrible and so tragic. When we accept it, we stay in the flow. That's when we experience the flow of the now. A lot of people think that if I'm experiencing a negative emotion, I'm not doing the law of attraction thing the right way, or if I'm experiencing a negative emotion, I'm actually attracting that emotion. I think that if you are ignoring and or trying to push away a negative emotion, you're giving life to it. So it's sort of like what I'm pushing away, I'm breathing into reality. When I'm accepting and allowing to filter through me and not resisting, I'm allowing to kind of like just filter through my body. And what I'm filtering through my body, I'm non-resistant to. So whatever I'm going to focus on, whether it's positive or negative or healthy or unhealthy, I'm going to breathe that into my reality. So what if I don't want a negative experience to reoccur in my life, then I must make peace with it so that I'm not focusing on it anymore. And focusing on it includes resisting it. It includes complaining about it. You're focusing on it, right? So if I don't want this negative thing to happen, then I should be not focusing on it, and I should be instead focusing on what I do want to happen. So this idea that acceptance leads to transcendence is definitely a key to emotional recovery when it comes to codependency. Number 8, the 8th key in my book, Codependent, Now What? It's Not You, It's Your Programming, is honor self more. When you feel a feeling, honor it. This does not imply that when we get cut off on the highway and we feel rage due to suddenly finding ourselves in fear of possibly being involved in a car accident, that we chase the driver down and curse him out. It means that when we feel the rage, we accept it and we honor it. If we allow it to surface without reacting to it. So honoring a feeling happens in the conscious realm. That's why I said earlier, the higher mind is a key. You have to know that you have the ability to observe the way you think, and that's a function of the prefrontal lobe, and it's called metacognition. I think the world needs to really get a hold of this and recognize that metacognition is possible. If you have a prefrontal lobe, you need to observe what you're observing in your body. You need to observe your emotions. You need to observe how you feel. You need to observe the way you think. You need to observe the words that come out of your mouth. You need to observe the way you respond to other people, the way you withdraw, the way that you maybe overreact, the way that you shut down, the way that you do whatever it is that you do. And so why? Because if you can observe it, only then in that space can you change it. So the self does not ooze out of your body and sit across from you at the kitchen table and discuss how you are feeling. Your self speaks to you through your emotional body. It is helpful to understand that the Trinity is you. You are the body, the mind, and the spirit, the soul self. Your body is a consequence of this time-space reality we call the earthly experience. To play on planet Earth, you need a body that is equipped with a central nervous system and a central computer. Within your divine magical electrical suit is housed your most divine aspect of you, yourself. So you want to make sure that you're learning to honor yourself, honor what you think and how you feel. Be very mindful of the way that you are presenting yourself in the 3D world, because what you focus on will grow. So number nine is action versus reaction. That's another key. Codependents, ACOAs, these are adult children of alcoholics, and love addicts react to everything. We are like puppets on a string. And because we have not been taught to think appropriately, because we have been forced to grow up in states of survival, and we missed out all of those amazing life skills that we need to be competent, responsible, reliable, self-reliant adults. We missed all of those life skills because we were living in survival. We do not have the strong conditioned emotional muscles needed to think rather than react. In addition, because we have been taught to overreact to even the tiniest drops of milk spilling onto the floor, our subconscious minds run programs similar to the ones the authorities in our lives taught us. So we have to learn to act versus react, to observe rather than react, right? This is all about self-control and self-discipline. But these keys build off one another. So if you begin to practice number 1 and you practice number 2 and you make it your life work to practice these keys, your life will improve. So number 10 is victor equals victim no more. So emotional freedom will require you to refuse to posture yourself as a victim ever again. When you hear your mind whining, woe is me, you must think and act from a higher realm of consciousness. This shifted for me when I realized that the power really is within me to heal. When I didn't know what I didn't know, I did feel like a victim. I felt powerless. I didn't know that there were tools that I could use to help me heal my life. And so when I learned about the subconscious mind, when I really focused on how the mind works, when I understood a dysfunctional family programs a child to think in a dysfunctional way, I was like, eureka, it's not me, it's just my programming. And so if what went in corrupted me, and now what's coming out of me is codependency, and that's a corrupt way to deal with myself and others, then what I want to do is make sure that I'm reprogramming what's going in. And if I stick with this journey and heal what's going in, my program will change, and thus I will change in the world. I will become a better version of myself. But that wasn't possible until I realized that there were tangible tools that I could create and I could really master that would help me change my life. So number 11, commit without limit. You cannot do this work and not commit without a limit. So a golden key to recovery is found in taking total accountability for every thought, spoken or unspoken, as well as any action witnessed by others or not. So that means you recognize that there are no secrets in the universe, that you're never going to get away with anything. Whatever you do in secret, the universe is basically storing. It's sort of like, Google, right? You think you're going to Google something and get away with it? No. There's a record of what you've been looking for somewhere in Google land, right? And it's the same thing with our feelings and our emotions, the visualizations that we have. There's a record of it somewhere. And this was a huge aha moment for me. And at first I was like terrified, like, oh no, like the universe, Google somewhere knows exactly what I'm thinking and feeling. But then once I got over it, I thought, okay, but what if I started to get excited about this idea that I could actually control what I'm thinking and then what I'm feeling. And it was like the universe became like this huge bulletin board. And I woke up every day and I was intentful and I wrote my affirmations and I did my meditations and I focused on abundance, right? So I committed to really reprogramming my codependent subconscious mind 100%. There was no way in the world that anyone could have told me I wasn't going to make it, because I was committed, because I understood that if I could change what I thought about, if I could change the energy in my body, I could change my life, because everything is registered in the universe and I wanted a piece of that. And all I had to do was create momentum and traction, and eventually I would experience the abundance of what it was, or the energy that I was sowing into the seed of the universe. And if I can do it, you can do it too. So number 12, surrender is the mender. I like things that rhyme. So to fight, deny, split off from, hide from, ignore, shame, hate, and or fear any aspect of us that is dark is like ignoring a gangrenous toe. We can do it, but eventually not taking responsibility for the aspect of us that is not so attractive will consume us completely. Surrendering to our personal shadows within allows us for more light to move into those shadows. Just as surrendering to the fact that we have a gangrenous toe allows us to seek and get help that we need for the infection so that the infection can finally heal. When we surrender, we do not do so under the assumption that we must like where we are or what we're doing or what we've experienced in our lifetime. It means that we are surrendering to the reality that we have a gangrenous toe or we have shadows, and that we are willing to fix it. So it's challenging to accept and surrender to this idea that you have a personality flaw, or you have some aspect of your personality that absolutely must be fixed. It's difficult, especially when you have tremendous shame in your background. But it's so important that we recognize that in order to heal from codependency and really acknowledge what's wrong so we can fix it, we have to surrender to what is. It doesn't mean I'm excited about being the adult child of an alcoholic or having a narcissistic parent or going through emotional neglect or whatever it is your story is. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is resisting it and being angry about it prevents healing from happening. So when you're ready, and you can't force this on someone, I can't force it on anyone. I could just give the keys, give you a roadmap, and when you're ready to take that step, you do. It's like graduation. Forgiveness is graduating. It's like, it's like a college class, right? But when you're first learning about the inner child, and you're in kindergarten and you're an adolescent and you're starting to feel angry, that's all part of the process, the healing process. And I don't think enough people in the healing industry really encourage people to understand that anger is just a state of mind. And as long as you're not reacting to that anger and you're allowing yourself to process that anger, it can be a very important emotion on the healing journey. I know with me, being allowed to be angry about my childhood finally allowed me to feel and create this concept of my inner child that was tangible. Now I can speak to my inner child. I can protect my inner child, but without being permitted to be angry, right? Because when you come from a dysfunctional home, parents and family tell you you're not having this experience and it's all in your head. And so I can't connect with this very natural, normal and emotion of anger. And so if I can't connect to it, I can't clear it. And if I can't connect to it and clear it, I can't move to graduation. I can't forgive. So forgiveness is like the cream on top of the sundae. It is the next step in the recovery journey. But it doesn't happen until we're allowed to be angry, until we're allowed to acknowledge what's happened to us. And so that part of the journey is all about surrendering and understanding that when we are surrendering, that's when we're mending. It's my hope that the 12 keys to recovery that you can find in Codependent Now What? It's Not You, It's Your Programming, help you to find the ability to stay on the path, to stick to healing from codependency and living above the veil of consciousness. Because living above the veil of consciousness allows you to be emotionally free. It allows you to stay in touch with who you really are. You don't have to apologize for who you are. All you have to do is remember who you are and learn to live out loud in a healthy way. Namaste, everybody. My name is Lisa Romano. I'm the Breakthrough Life Coach and creator of the 12-Week Breakthrough Coaching Program. This is a program that has been specifically created for adult children of alcoholics, children of narcissistic parents, or for people who have been in toxic relationships way too long and they've lost themselves. So if you are interested in learning how to heal the inner child, hear the inner child, process what happened in the past, get in touch with your emotions, and learn the keys and the tools that you need to become more accountable for yourself so that you can live a non-codependent life, check out the 12-Week Breakthrough Coaching Program. The 12-Week Breakthrough Coaching Program is now being offered at 50% off on demand. This version of the class does not come with a Facebook Live class or Facebook moderation. If you prefer, however, to wait for a live class, you get to work with me and my life coaches inside a private Facebook group. You also get to experience weekly live streams with me where I get to answer your questions live. And don't forget, if you'd like to listen to one of my books for free, all you have to do is click one of the links in the description box. And if you would like to receive push notifications from me that include daily loving the self affirmations and journaling prompts and wallpapers that you can download, check out my affirmation app, available now in the App Store. Namaste, everybody. And remember, the key to your emotional sobriety has never been outside of you. It's always been inside of you. You, dear one, are the secret. Hey, if you love this content, don't forget to check out the next video, and you can go to my website and take the codependency quiz. A narcissist might say, of course I'm nice, right? Because in their head, they're not thinking that they're doing anything wrong. So when they're hanging out with you, you should be grateful. So